There we go. Now we're going to be, yeah. That was nice. That set the mood, I think. Really awesome. So hi, guys. Welcome. I'm Toch Dinsmore, a principal here at Overit. I'm just going to quickly introduce folks, imagining actually Dave Parker, our senior sound designer. He'll be there. This is Jeremy Evans, our art director, Chris Powers, director of technology, and Michael Hoffman, our special guest, patent and intellectual property attorney. Welcome, everyone, and welcome online. And there is Dave. Oh, I need this too. So before I get started, I thought I'd ask how many marketers are here in the room? And also shout out online if you're a marketer. Let me know if you're a communications person, content creator. What else do we have here? Is there any developers, coders? It's okay, come on in. Safe space, safe space. Cool. Okay, so I think we're in the right crowd here. So first off, what is AI, right? The simplest definition that I have seen that I like is it is the science of making machines smarter. That supercomputer back here, now that's a very old one, obviously, but that's been around. The supercomputers have been around since the 1950s, so AI isn't actually new. A couple other quotes I like are, the science of technology is the technology of tomorrow. And that is Edward Teller. Does anyone know who Edward Teller is besides Katie over there? Or Jeremy? So Edward Teller was considered the father of the hydrogen bomb. I also bring up this quote from speaking at Tech Valley High School a couple weeks ago. I was on a panel with some really smarter people than me actually working on supercomputers, and a kid in the audience asked, will there ever be a complete AGI replacing humans? And I was like, AGI? Oh, okay, I know what that means, artificial general intelligence. And our answer was collectively, we hope not. So I know there's a lot of doom headlines. There's every day we're able to read about AI, and there's always a negative, and there's a fear. But it's really been around a long time, and I guess my point is, it's already here. It is here, and unless you're like my father was, you probably own a cell phone. You're probably on some social media. So it's already infused in your life today. AI is here. So it's Alexa and Siri answering questions. It's Amazon predicting products you like. It's Netflix and YouTube making suggestions to you. It's programmatic ads that are delivering these pants that I bought. They're Google routing your destination. They're customer service chatbots answering questions for you. They're pretty much everywhere. They're your phone and face recognition. Their customer service. It's kind of across the board. So in marketing and communications, what we're really talking about is generative AI. And what is generative AI? And the reason I'm using this paper is because I like analog, but also because my eyesight is so bad, and I was a little vain this morning, so I didn't put on my glasses. So bear with me here in my awkwardness. So generative AI is a mouthful. It is the systems, products, and technologies we use to process the data we humans are feeding these technologies to simulate human intelligence, talent, and problem solving. Generative AI is to generate, meaning predict. And if you haven't already guessed, we are AI optimists here, especially me. I'm like really annoying. So generative AI is here to optimize all of our superpowers here in marketing, communications, design, and strategy. It is a tool for humans, and I believe in using your power for good. I believe that in marketing across the board, with or without AI, let's use our power for good. And I think you should all unleash your power. And that's a very bad graphic. This is the only bad graphic, really. This is from Duet, which is like kind of subpar in graphics. So sorry, Jeremy. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I used that. So I want you to think about something. Just keep in mind for yourself and for your business. And your business meaning even you as a marketer. Keep in mind that with AI, you can optimize and make your efforts just more efficient. You can accelerate, so you can accelerate yourself, and you can accelerate what you're delivering back, and you can actually transform. You can create a new product or service or a new idea all by yourself or for your business. So I'm going to talk about something that's like, kind of everywhere. Language models, LLMs, a large language model. And I have a list here, of a few big contenders, ChatGPT-4, which is actually now announced 5, and ChatGPT-4 Turbo, Poe, Claude 2, Bing Chat, Perplexity, which I put in pink because I'm biased and I really like it, Pi, Falcon, Bard, Duet. These are all language models. There's a lot of them out there. Chris can start talking a lot geekier about it than I can. But and there's my laptop and a little shout out with the Overit mug. But that's me, my screen with Perplexity, my friend, my smartest friend. So one thing, going back to when people get a little nervous when you even start talking about using a language model, they worry about the hallucinations. And that is actually a term for when it kind of delivers maybe bad data, and remember that it's creating data just from generating, right? So sometimes it generates bad data. Sometimes it needs more references. It needs resources. And you needed to provide it more details, and you need to try it again. All of things with language models, you need to kind of iterate and test. And also, it's often with these language models, you can double check. You can use a couple and make sure you're getting the right data. And also, Perplexity. The reason I bring that one up a lot with communications and marketing people and content creators is that it does provide references. So it provides links, and that's really great. So you can actually track down the data, make sure, and double check your resources and pull them into your presentations, just like I did here, which is really, you can't. This one's a hard one, also a mouthful, but you'll see I have the Perplexity sources at the bottom for defining what the heck is engineering a prompt, which engineering a prompt is what you need to do with a language model. How many people have used large language models? Awesome. How many people are subscribing and paying for? What? Okay. So yeah, do yourself a favor. It's not the same thing. When you go back to your office, you need to subscribe. It's really not the same thing. Okay. So you guys probably get what engineering a prompt is. I actually don't like the word engineering as much as I think feeding prompts, where this definition here, prompt engineering, is the process of structuring text that can be interpreted and understood by generative AI models. This could be a query, a command, a short statement of feedback, or a longer statement including context, instructions, and input. So really, what can you do with language models? What can you do? You can brainstorm and concept ideas. You can answer questions. You can translate languages. You can help write pretty much anything. You can proofread, so the more you feed it, the better it's going to be. So the best thing to do is upload PDFs, upload give a lot of context to what you're doing, explain yourself. And I'll get more and more into this, but really, there's a lot of uses that, one of my favorite ones for marketers is being able to, if you need to synthesize a lot of data, say you're looking at reviews, on social or for online, Google reviews or something, and you're trying to figure out customer service issues, you can download a set of thousands of reviews and upload it to ChatGPT and ask it to summarize your 20 biggest issues. Think about the savings of stuff like that. Even if you're writing a strategy or creating concepts, you can go back and upload things and ask, what am I missing? What other ideas are there? So it can fill in the blanks a lot. It can fill in holes. It can provide demographics and feedback. It's pretty awesome. So, but you have to get the paid version, okay? Okay. So when you're learning to engineer prompts, you can't think of it as you're uploading mostly one thing. Like you're going to ask it a question and it's like Google and it's going to spit out things. It really needs to be worked with. One of the things that people forget to do often is provide not just context, but fill out your profile once you purchase it. Tell it who you are and why you're going to be using it. I have filled out my profile obsessively with all the reasons I'm going to use and talk to Perplexity, and it's amazing how it pulls it in and understands me, and the more I use it, you're training these models. So, and you have to actually create strings and subject matters. So if you start to talk about, say, a proposal you're working on, and you're feeding it information about that client, and you're looking for feedback on things you're writing, the more you talk about that client and yourself, and even upload the proposal and upload all the pieces, the more it's going to, as you develop things, it's going to spit out more and more context and understanding of what you're trying to achieve. So it's not like a magic, give me an answer thing on its own. It'll do its best work the more you talk to it. So here's some quick hit advice. Be specific, provide context and detail, yet be concise. Feed the information. This is a lot of what I already talked about. Use roles and personas. That's a really good one. So you are a creative director. You are the head of whatever business. You are the manager of a hotel, whatever the scenario is. And try to put yourself in the shoes of maybe a client or a customer or the audience you're trying to get to. So this I've already mostly talked about, uploading images. Oh, that's a really cool one. So you have to download the app. I have that at the bottom with an explanation point, but make sure you download the app. You can talk to it. And I know I sound strange, I'm talking to it, but if I'm on the road and all of a sudden I have a thought, it's nice to be able to put it in there, to go back and have an idea session later. Or, I've heard of people using it that set up stores, and they get inspired by sunsets, and they take pictures and they say, how do I bring this into my store? So it's kind of cool to be able to, how can you define Pantones? I'm excited. I hope they get to audio where I can ask it what bird is chirping in my backyard and have it answer. It's not doing that yet. I've tried. But, Dave, right? That's a version. And, you'll see a stat there that's just, Harvard Business Review, how, we are significantly getting higher quality results when we put this into our workflows. And I think that's really important. So as we go along, the presentation gets a lot prettier because it starts to take over with all Jeremy's beautiful artwork. And I give him full credit for that. So I just asked for a unicorn because I like them. And I feel all of us that are here in this AI space are unicorns right now. So other generative AI applications, and this is just really quick, maybe some of you are using note-taking tools or calendar reminders. There's a lot of ways you can do that. If you're not Otter, we use a lot of us use here, but note-taking is great. If you can't make a meeting, you can still send your AI. It can take notes. You can use that to send to clients. You can use that for reminders. You can ask for background on a client before you take that meeting to make sure you're in the right headspace. There are workspaces. I mentioned Duet from Google. I'm a little underwhelmed, but I think in finance it's exciting. That's not my wheelhouse. There's databases like Notion that I think are just spectacular, although I don't really understand it entirely. Chris, you probably do. There's a lot of things out there in creative like Canva, Adobe, and all the things Jeremy works on, which he will talk about. And then the world of marketing, which again, a lot of this, you guys have been around AI, just not realizing it with the email automation and CRMs. There's a lot out there. The chatbots, again. There's some neat applications with media planning that I think, for those of us that do media planning, it's wonderful. Lead gen, social media, analytics reporting. And analytics is a very, very powerful thing within ChatGPT paid version. There's a lot you can do for processing there. And then just getting into the key players of image stable diffusion, which I'm not going to go into other than, have you heard of any of these? Stability AI, OpenAI, well, OpenAI is LLM, Midjourney, that's DALL-E, right? OpenAI? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, 1, 2, and 3. Yeah. So anyway, these are the big guys. And what do you use them for? Well, he'll get more into this, but you'll see every slide is just beautiful because Jeremy's created them all using AI. So we use it for creative conception. We use it for rapid ideation. We use it to make production-ready art. And see how it's so just all beautiful. And this is just imagery. Again, I'm just putting very pretty images. Jeremy has made probably thousands.
Yeah, probably more than that. But we have a bunch of different accounts and a whole bunch of different tools. And so this is just kind of a conglomeration of some of the work we've done over the past year or so, with the most recent models that are obviously much more realistic, but also, basically we can make them any style we want. So these are just more kind of for fun than any kind of production, just testing the tools, playing around with prompt craft, trying to see how to speak to the models to get the output that we desire. We put together a whole presentation of these. We'll probably do an actual image talk later on. But we have a whole presentation about prompt crafting and how to use the tools. And so these are just some of the slides that we pulled from there.
And I think that's a good point, Jeremy, is we'll probably do, I think, we're going to look for feedback on what you would like to learn. I think we could do a lot of a series just on prompting alone, just on, pieces of all of this. It's, there's so much.
There's a lot. Yep.
There's so much. So I've tried to breeze through really fast because it's more exciting for all of us to talk, and I'm just trying to give this very general overview. So hopefully I didn't talk way too fast. I do that. And so where to begin? You have to make sure you're leading AI. It's not leading you. You don't need to get overwhelmed. You just need to test and play. I would really, most of us being, marketers and content creators, language models are a really great way. If you're doing data analysis, you definitely would lean towards ChatGPT 4, 4.5 Turbo, 5 is coming out, all that. But if you're more of a writer, researcher, I would probably recommend you start with Perplexity because you can play with a couple different models in there. But I would go home, go to your work, go wherever you're going, hybrid or in office, and invest in one of those tools. And you want to implement and test and encourage anybody around you that wants to use AI that's interested, anybody that you work with, if they're interested, make sure they're diving in too, make sure they're learning as well. And lastly, and this is something that is really important. And for us, it's pretty new, because what you're seeing here are the people at Overit that are most immersed in AI. So it's new, right? We're kind of at the beginning of this new frontier, and it's a journey. So we're on this journey together for real. And one of the most important things is to make sure you develop policies for responsible use, both internally and for your clients. And no one's going to be able to read that unless you have super sight. But what we have done is develop Overit guidelines, and we'll be sharing them here for the first time, and also next week. And I actually highlighted what was most important out of what was written, which I wrote not using AI, and with actual feedback from the executive team here. We are, I think, ultimately the power line is using our power for good. But like I told you, I've been saying that as a marketer before AI, use your power for good. So now we have more power, right? So AI tools start and end with humans. This is our guidelines. Empower our employees, leveraging their unique skills, never replacing human ingenuity, creativity, and expertise. Ensure the highest standards of quality, accuracy through the following: rigorous fact-checking, testing, meticulous reviewing our work. We believe in the power of creativity and engagement of humans. It cannot replicate the human experience. Responsible AI use, regularly evaluating and educating our teams and clients, and evolving and adapting for our clients and our community, which is very important because this stuff is moving so fast. What's here today could change tomorrow, and that's really the truth. So thank you, guys, and I thank you for listening to me. I hope you all followed that whole little diatribe, and now I'm gonna open it up to everyone here, and I guess let's start with an introduction and an overview of how you're using AI and how you see AI. Who wants to start? Chris? Oh, Dave. Dave, yeah, you do it.
I'll go jump right in. Well, some of the tools I've been using, I've been checking a lot of things out. I feel like, well, as Michelle kind of pointed out before when she talked about that, it'd be really cool if, I could just open the app and say, what kind of bird is in my backyard? Audio, I do feel, is lagging behind everything else. And I kind of get it. Audio is, challenging. It's really challenging. I think it could get there. I think it'd be cool if it did that. You know what I mean? I think it's possible. Everything is, got its, a waveform of a sound is a lot like a fingerprint, so that it's possible, So some of the tools I've been using aren't the things where, you hear a lot about, we just generated a whole entire song with AI or something like that. That's not what I've looked at that stuff. That's not what I'm using. But I've been using for maybe most of the year some plugins that do little things in audio world, in my mixing world. So stuff that'll kind of analyze the audio I give it and recommend how about this setting? And I'm like, oh wow, that's actually really close. And I've tested it where, let's say the example I used for Michelle a couple weeks ago was I had an acoustic guitar, mic'd it up. How would I treat it? And I treated it that way. And same acoustic guitar, mic'd it up, run it through the AI thing. And it's like, hey, why don't you do this? And I was amazed at where it EQ things in the same spot I did. And I'm like, well, this is what I would have done. Okay, well now I trust this thing, so I'm just gonna let it rock. You know what I mean? So I'll just use it sometimes to be like, put it on this, put it on that, see what it does. It doesn't get it all the time, so I have to do the whole, like you said, quality check thing. Yeah. So that's mostly how I've been using it in some of these smaller ways. I think it's there in the smaller ways, but in kind of the large scale, generate me a whole song or something. I'm like, well, I don't have the control that you have. It appears with what you're doing. Like audio, I don't have that. I'm just like, try again. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't know. So that's how I've been using it more frequently. Audio editing, mixing, just improving the way things sound, stuff like that. So I'll pass it along to the next. So I'll continue later.
And make sure you're collecting questions because we'll start jumping in too. But yeah.
So
Jeremy.
Let's see. So I use AI all the time for a lot of different things in my job. I'm a graphic designer and art director here at Overit. So I use AI when I'm generating images for a client or for a project. So just raw using Midjourney, Adobe Firefly, Stability AI, all kinds of different tools to try to generate images for clients that we may use in some kind of marketing. But also we use it in Canva, we use it in Adobe tools, right? There are all kinds of different, like the generative background fills. There's all kinds of, like Dave said, there's all kinds of little tiny tools that are built into a lot of the tools that we use regularly now that used to make things really difficult. So a great example is, let's say I get a headshot of Michelle and she wants me to put it on a website or she wants me to use it somewhere, but it's cropped really tight to her head, as an example, right? In Adobe, I can, pretty quickly, recrop the photo to the size that I want it to and make a selection and have it just generate Michelle's body, as an example, right? So there's a lot of times just in, regular graphic design where you need an image to fit a space, you wish you had a little bit of extra space in an image. So I use AI a lot for stuff like that. Sometimes I'll use it to recolor artwork. Sometimes I'll use it to, quickly, make like a mask or, like remove someone from a background really quick. So there's a lot of really interesting tools that are built into not only just Adobe's tools, but also like Canva's tools. I think Canva's really great adding their new tools, their new AI tools, because it makes graphic design a little more approachable to people who are a little outside of the, the know. So there's a lot of really cool touch points for visuals. And even for stuff in this presentation, like the AI, QR codes that you guys saw at the beginning, like we created those using an AI generator where you can essentially utilize the tool to generate a QR code based on a link that you put in and also a prompt that you put in. So you can tell it like, I want my QR code to look like this, or make it look like a scene, or make it look like this. So there's a lot of really interesting ways that we can utilize these tools to enhance kind of the visuals that we're outputting out of our department. Yeah.
Cool. I don't know where that QR code is or how to go back to it, but we should go back to it for everybody because because we have a presentation. That presentation that I just showed is on there, and a bunch of really great links and such from all of us.
Tons of cool assets. There's tons of tools. We'll have a list of links to tools. There's the the image presentation that I gave, and that has some cool stuff about Midjourney and how to use the tools and stuff like that. And then we'll have some links for a whole bunch of other tools that we talk about today. So if anybody's interested, I can hook you guys up with the link tree.
Yeah, awesome. And like, all sorts of favorite newsletters and such. So, Chris Powers.
So basically, I use the APIs kind of fairly exclusively for kind of creating, going through what our clients' needs are for their marketing efforts. So we're talking everything from customer service efforts, responding to their customers, to being able to generate quick and easy blogs and pictures for their social media account. They don't want to pay an advertising agency every time they want to do a blog, but we're able to provide them with a level of creativity and uniqueness that they're able to do on their own. But really just, using these things as little tools in their workflow. So defining what they're trying to do. And then what I see as AI really going towards are these little functions, these specific, unique things that AI will do very well for a specific item and connecting all these things together. So I'm out there basically looking at these different utilities and tools, and or how our clients would use them, in terms depending on what their business is. We deal with a lot of home service clients, so there's a lot of customer service efforts. Kind of good example, which is fairly ironic, is they'll use it for responding to reviews so that they sound more human, which is funny enough, is that, that takes that kind of CSR, sometimes a little bit lazy, they're going to respond the same way every time. We're able to create a persona so when that review comes in, we're saying, this is who you are. You're funny, you're clever. This is who you work for, and this is the review that you received. And regardless what that is, it comes back pulling sentiment analysis. It's generating unique, humanized content that is able to respond. And at the end of the day, they look more professional. They're able to speed up that process, by not, going through each review and having to sit there and do that, which is how you end up copying, pasting. Thank you so much for your business. Thank you so much for your business. So, we use it. I tend to try to find those gaps and create utilities for AI based on that. And then I use it specifically myself, just, using ChatGPT for code iteration or something, troubleshooting something that I have. I'll just stick all the code. Tell me what's wrong with this, because at the end of the day, I'm probably more of a creator than a coder, even though I do code pretty much all day, all the time. There are definitely better coders than I am. So I'll put it in there and say, hey, can you troubleshoot what this is, or generate a function really quickly that I don't feel like writing 110 lines of something. And sure, like everything else, like creativity, or art or anything, you have to look at these things. You have to go through it and make sure that it's good. A lot of the times, even with code, they'll generate something that's not functional, or so it's not 100% there yet. But I use it for that. I use it for ideas for names of things, or definitely in the analytics space. We'll use it with our people who are kind of going through our clients' financial data for the month and say, what do they really sell well? What could they be doing well based on trends that were this? What would you suggest we do going forward? So those are the types of things that kind of I would use it for on an everyday basis.
Now, and just because you mentioned that, it made me think about when you're talking to some of these language models, which I don't know if I think I heard you say you might even have one local on your machine. Did you do that?
Well, I run stable diffusion.
Okay.
So you can run stable diffusion on your computer. But most of those models, you're not going to run something like ChatGPT, but what you can do are run these, like in the terms of like generative art. They're I don't know if you guys have heard like LoRa's are. So it stands for the low rank adaptation or something like that. And basically what they're really tiny applications that do something very well. This thing makes the best green eyes ever, and you're going to apply this to your model or whatever this is, and that's that's kind of where I see that these.
Oh, okay. So I was listening to these folks that were, they had used a language model. They've taken ChatGPT-4 or something and put it local on a server for their, internal structure. And one of the neat uses I heard in healthcare, which was obviously using HIPAA compliant, stuff, setups, but was, think about somebody who's gone to see 17 doctors about something and they can't figure out what's wrong. If you're able to use AI in the healthcare HIPAA compliant, using stuff and like cross-reference every doctor's analysis, that's pretty amazing. And there's stuff happening that is more niche like that with products using these models. So Michael, how do you fit into this space with AI? It's a moving fast target, and I imagine.
First of all, I've got to say I'm blown away by what you guys are doing, because
wow, thanks.
you live it.
Yeah.
Most regular people like myself, we just kind of scratch the surface of ChatGPT and these other generative programs. But what's happening is that things that get created by generative AI, there's a lot of questions as to who owns it, whether it can be owned, whether it can be protected. And also, where is this going next? Because this is sort of the multimedia world that you guys live in, but you could imagine like a company like General Electric saying, design me a better turbine blade that performs to these specifications, or an audio company saying, design me a better filter that can remove feedback, whatever it might be. So there's all these inventions that are going to sort of flow from generative AI, which we haven't even kind of got there yet. So there's just a lot going on. It's a moving target. I can delve into where we are now, but with sort of what's protectable, what's not. But there's a lot of unanswered questions.
Yeah.
So for example, I'll just give a couple examples. Generally, things you generate, like images or textual content, is not protectable under copyright law. Right now, under copyright law, something's got to be created by a human. But then it kind of begs the question, well, what if I generate a series of images of flowers and I arrange them in a certain way as the creative director? Now, is that protectable? And so there's the Copyright Office, at least right now, is sort of said it's a case-by-case basis, which, that doesn't really make anybody that comfortable when you don't really know what's protectable, not protectable. But then you got to think, too, all the agreements that you have in place with clients and whatnot, and I know we went through this, is, you might be warranting that or assigning rights that maybe you don't have. Generally, when you create something, you own the intellectual property, you assign it through some written document, but you may not own the intellectual property to start with. So now you're writing a contract saying we're giving you something, but you're not giving anything. So it kind of creates all these potential sort of pitfalls in the legal world.
Amazing, because so even with language models, just the prompting that I would do, I've seen a bunch of marketing out there like proprietary prompting that will make you millions, and they're charging money for these classes and they're calling their stuff proprietary. But
that sort of falls into the realm of trade secrets. So if you have prompts that again, this is a world I'm not familiar with too much, because to me it's generate a song or a poem or something.
Yeah.
But with the stuff I'm hearing that you guys are doing is just incredible, where you have these, you're feeding it in a lot of data to sort of train the model. Yeah. And how do you remember what you just did? So so to talk about all those prompts. So if you maintain those things as secret, you can potentially have trade secret rights to them.
Yeah, interesting, because and that's what I'm learning as I'm using Perplexity, where I'm using it for repeat tasks that have worked, repeat prompts. Not that I think my stuff's super trade secret, but I could see it definitely going there.
I think that would be a hard fight in court, though. I mean, it seems like writing a prompt. I mean, there is how the language model listens. Right, and that's set. That is what it is. That's created by the creators of that. And so there's only how you direct it. I don't see how they could possibly.
Well, trade secret law is pretty powerful if you keep things secret. So, for example, like customer lists could be protected. So if you have an employee, or you're in a venture and you share something with somebody else under a non-disclosure agreement, that's kind of where it would come into play.
Right. But like somebody coming up with a similar prompt, let's just say that, because they've spent the same amount of time iterating through different prompts and how it works, and eventually they come, eventually the mastery of prompt engineering is the mastery of prompt engineering, and I imagine there has to be very similar prompts and usages out there. I think that would be tough for them to prove, unless they went, hey, look at my prompt, and that guy the next day is using it.
Yeah, right. Trade secrets generally don't protect things that are separately created. Right. So it really comes into play with, within organizations, employees leaving organizations, people under some contractual arrangement. Right. But separately, if I create a prompt and you create a prompt, that's
how does that work? How does that prompt? Because prompting, isn't it all kind of? So how does that work in your world?
So in the world of images, prompting is a little bit different depending on where you are using what model you're talking to, right? So as Chris was kind of driving at, right? If I'm talking to Stability AI and I'm trying to generate something, or I'm talking to Midjourney, I'm trying to generate something, or I'm talking to Adobe Firefly and I'm trying to generate something, right? Like each one of those language models is going to respond differently to my prompt, right? And in some ways, like Midjourney is a great example about what these guys were just talking about. Like Midjourney operates completely openly. So if I put in a prompt and I put the enter key in and it goes on the internet, anybody who's a part of the Midjourney community may discover that image because it's posted publicly within the community. And not only can they see that image, they can see the exact prompt that I used, and they can see any other of the parameters that I used to generate that image. So what Midjourney is trying to do, and I think a lot differently from some of these other companies, is they're basically saying like, there are no trade secrets here. Like if you choose to play in this pool, you're playing publicly with everybody. And that kind of takes away a lot of the trade secret stuff. And what it turns it into is, there are communities within Midjourney who they just sit down together, like in Discord, and they just talk about like, I put these two words in and got this. What did you get? Or they'll run the same prompt over and over and over and over hundreds of times, make charts and graphs, and basically be able to tell you like, if you put in these 2 words and this with this prompt extra on the end of it, you'll get this image. But that only works with Midjourney, right? So if you try to do that same thing, that same recipe with a different tool, you'd get a completely different output, right? So they do it a little bit differently in that they want the community to be very open source. Everybody come and play. Other tools do it a little bit differently, like Adobe AI or some of these other things where like Firefly, you generate something, but it's fairly private to you. Like it may be in the cloud, it may be visible even to other people if they're searching for images, but they're not going to see how you generated it. They're not going to see your prompt. They're not going to see the tools that you use to make it. So it really depends on what model you choose to talk to and how that model accepts input, right? Because sometimes it's just text, right? It's like, show me a picture of a tree, right? And you get a picture of a tree. But other times it's like, you can get very prescriptive with certain programs. So you could say like, say you're generating an image of a field and you get tons of flowers and you're like, I don't want flowers, I just want like big tall grass, right? With tools like Midjourney, you can actually give it a parameter that after your prompt, you can say no flowers. And Midjourney now knows like, oh, it used the no prompt, it doesn't want flowers, right? So there's a lot of different ways to interact with these tools. And depending on the way that you interact with them, you may get like extra, the extra ability, like Dave was saying, he can't interact with the audio tools in the same way I can, right? He can't say like, isolate this part of the waveform and change it, right? Where I can do that with like in painting, right? If I generate an image in Midjourney, or I don't know if Adobe does this yet, but I can generate an image and I can go, oh, look, that person has 6 fingers, and I can isolate just that part of the image, and then I can tell it to rerun it, but rerun just that little bit. So I love everything else, but just rerun this little bit, right? So it really depends. And I think, in the world of prompt crafting, you'll probably end up with, it's going to be a job. Like it's going to be a job like you hire me to, like fix your photos or build you a website. Companies are going to hire people who know how to talk to these machines, essentially. So at the end of the day, what Chris does and what I do and what Dave's doing, like there'll be professional people who are brought up in school to just learn how to speak to this model. Yep. Yeah, so it's pretty crazy. Prompt craft is fun. I definitely encourage everybody here to, when you're creating imagery, it's not just like, putting in words, it's the length of the prompt, what words in what order. Some models respond to certain words more than others. So definitely like experiment with things and play around with stuff, and don't be discouraged if you're playing with a tool and, you put in something and you don't get exactly what you expected out of it. That's almost what I would expect to start. Right? It was when you start putting in stuff and, then you're like, oh, geez, now I know what to do. So just play around with prompting and experiment with it. Don't be afraid of it. And don't be afraid of, what comes out necessarily. Because depending on the model you talk to, you're going to get different stuff every time.
Yeah, and I think, use, like he was saying, these prompts are available. You're going to look, you're going to sit there in a Discord server, you're going to see these images, and and it also gets your creative, ideation flowing. You're kind of, oh my God, oh wow, look at that. Oh, you know what? I really like that one little piece over here. Let's see what that prompt was. So go through other people's prompts, borrow pieces of it. You can see how they're using the functionality too. Like you can do everything from what camera it was shot from, or the aspect ratios, and how you do that. You can weight certain words more than other certain words so that the AI knows that this is more important than this is. But just go through and look at what other people are doing and experiment, and in no time really though you can master some of this stuff pretty, or at least be very good at it in short order if you're.
Yeah, absolutely. You can, and there's resources online. I think we linked to some of them in the tools, but there are prompt craft forums where people just go and ask questions. Like, I want to create this. Like, how do you create it? Like, or I want to, create a consistent character, right? A lot of times, like, someone will generate something and they're like, oh, that's really great. I want more of that, or I want that person, but I want them doing a different thing. Like, how do I do that? And there are all kinds of tools and resources that are available to help you start your prompt in a way that when you decide you want to make an iteration, you can go back and do that. So specifically with Midjourney, right? There are a lot of different tools that you can that you can use at the beginning if you start knowing, like, I want to make a character, and maybe I want to change the way this character looks, or I want to change their pose or the way that they're moving. There are parameters that you can add to the end of your prompt so that when you want to make those edits, or when you decide that you want to make those edits, Midjourney knows and can make those edits easier for you.
Jeremy, I have a question.
Sure.
So it's a rabbit hole, kind of, right? Like I've been in Mid-Journey, even in language models.
Sure.
You know, you can kind of you go down this. Do you ever, like, cognizantly, and I've had to do this, go, how long would it actually take me to do that versus just make it?
Yeah,
because you
all the
have to
time.
weigh that. Because sometimes,
All
like,
the
I'll write a
time.
prompt and be like, oh, I should have just written that because I just spent 20 minutes doing the thing that I could have done. It's like taking, driving with your GPS when you actually know where you're going. So I don't want to do that to myself. Have you done that?
Yeah, so all the time, but a lot of times it's reversed for me, right?
Okay.
Because a lot of the times when I make something or when I have an idea for something for a client or I want to pitch an idea, getting to that final piece is a lot of steps, and sometimes it includes departments that I'm not involved in, right? Like if I pitch something that maybe I need somebody to 3D model, or I pitch something that, I need a video person or an audio person to be involved with. But regardless, like I can, it can utilize these tools in a whole bunch of different ways. Trying to think of like a really good example. Ask the question again.
Well, I'll give you an
Just-
example.
yeah,
right?
give me an
Like
example.
If I have to write a one-page sales sheet
Right,
on
okay.
an idea I have, I'll write down a bunch of bullets.
Yep.
But then, or I write it into Perplexity.
Mm-hmm.
But by the time I've crafted the prompt so perfectly, I could have just finished it on
Yep.
my own.
So great
And so
example.
I have to weigh that. Like, wait a minute.
Let's say I need somebody to craft, or let's say I'm generating something and I have an idea for a client, like I want to pitch a 3D character, right?
Yeah.
But I don't have the time to sit down and model a character and light it and
Right.
give it fur or whatever it is and pose it and all that stuff, right? I can very quickly, within a few seconds in Mid-Journey, have a beautiful 3D model of something, whatever it is that I wanted in seconds. And if it's not exactly what I needed, I can change the prompt, do it again. I could, within the time that we've been here, just in this meeting alone, I could have probably generated 10,000 images or more, just by sitting there prompting, reprompting, creating new images, utilizing different tools to create images and utilizing our multiple accounts to create images.
Yeah, that's interesting because now I know copy and paste. So I actually will take something if I need to edit, and I might copy and paste it to 3 different language models,
Yep.
just to see what it spits back. But I have all my screens open, like, okay, now I got it, and it's like, oh, mad scientist over there. What about you, Dave, in that world, right?
I was thinking about that as you were going. There's so much room. I'm thinking about, like, we don't have that level of prompting or anything like that or control, but there's so much room for it,
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff that I'm using now is based on something entirely different, which is like machine learning kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I play the audio, it listens, it reads, so and then it reacts, right? So like, and we actually did a lot of that here at the studio a couple years ago with I don't really know who the client was, but the voice learning stuff that we're recording here a lot. So we had people company hire us to record. Oh, it was like, I don't know, maybe it was like
Thousands.
like so many people, and they all had to read through these scripts. Like it was things like
Voice
Google, do
application
this,
work.
where's the nearest that? How do we get to the grocery store? That kind of stuff. So, and saying everything, Google, Alexa, whatever it was, anything. So then they take all that and whatever, run it through their stuff. Learn everybody's voices to improve the accuracy of some of these things, like your cell phone, Alexa, whatever it is. So some of the audio tools that I use now are based on that. So an example of that is, as an audio engineer, it's a pretty broad world. There's a lot. So I've never really been like a mastering engineer, right? So so I'll usually send stuff for mastering, but we got a mastering tool that's based off of machine learning, and basically what you do is you go through and it has all these different categories for, is this jazz or pop or is it whatever, and in each category they've through machine learning they've analyzed all these big songs, all these like current whatever it is or older whatever songs, and they've figured out like this is the target that you need to be in for this type of genre of music. You play the song, it reads it, and analyzes it. It's sort of, some of it's preset, and then some of it is, it just listens and figures it out. So it's like a mix of both preset and it figuring it out. And like I said before with the acoustic guitar example, it's pretty decent at figuring it out. Like it's things that like, oh, I would have done that, like that's, so it's this blend. So it's mostly through machine learning, the stuff that I've been playing with, and less through prompting. But there's plenty of room for prompting when I think about it. So like an example of, you know, again, where audio is kind of lagging behind in some of that stuff. A good example I saw on the internet recently, I think it was like Google LM, where you can kind of go and type in like, give me a sound like this or give me a sound like that, and it'll spit something out. Somebody put in like, give me 60s drums, and you get this like really groovy sounding 60s drum loop, all like old sounding, and then you change that to 70s drums and you get a mess with keyboards in it. And you're like, whoa, you know, like a goofy drum loop with keyboard. Like, okay, now no keyboard, how do I get out of this? And it turns into this slippery thing. So there's room for improvement in the audio realm as far as prompting, but it's really interesting to hear about that, because then I'm just sitting here thinking about like, wow, you know, what all could you do? I believe it could get pretty far. It's just that I think audio in general is always difficult. One of my friends is into video, and I'm always comparing audio to video. We're always doing that versus each other, and I realize how much more challenging audio really is, you know, that way, you know. You know, an example of like what would be really cool to prompt is going back to the drum loop thing. Like, I can't just use any drum loop. It has to be a certain pattern, a certain feel, a certain way, certain sound. So like, how to achieve that, you know, it would be really cool with all the prompting that you could figure it out, you know. That's really talking to it. That's where it gets tricky with some of the music tools is there's some pretty cool things out there. You know, I can sort of regenerate a section or, you know, tempo and key, but like the things I need to do are way beyond that. Like, I need to use this exact melody, so whatever's in there has to match this melody. I have to use this exact rhythm, you know, it has to fit that way, and I start to like struggle to control any of that whenever I play with this stuff. But it's getting closer. There's a few things that break it down a little further, but I'm much more interested in like all the smaller tools, you know, all the little things. Like, what if I had the tool that specifically did, I was thinking about this last night. One of the things that's always a challenge, and I'll use sound libraries for this, but like doing something with horns, it's always a challenge because the articulation's never right. I've recorded the real players, it's more natural. Even the sample libraries where it is real players, see, that's some gray area right there with AI, and you know, we got sample libraries already. We're already using people's stuff that they performed already, a lot of it. And, Chris knows what I'm saying. Yeah, it's like, you know, so it's like, that's the whole, what's the difference really between these sound libraries where I've got all these recordings of horn players already that I can use for free, and whether it's AI generated or not? It gets to like they're not, like, I'm using the samples and they're not getting credit for my creative. I'm guiding it and creating it. At the end of the day, it's just like what you're doing. It's us that are deciding what's cool and what works. Yeah. So is it really? We're orchestrating. Yeah. Are we really like, right, exactly. Like who's, yeah. So it's interesting. But being able to, you know, do like horns, something like that, it's always a challenge for me. It'd be great. Be like, come up with like a more realistic like horn section or line for this part than like me sitting there with samples and like just manipulating it like crazy until I get it kind of almost tolerable.
So that's an interesting thing you just mentioned about, you know, the databases, and I know there's tools that seem more governed and regulated and licensed and copyrighted than other tools, and there seems to be like, or they have HIPAA behind them because they're doing things a certain way versus not. So there's how do you think, let's ask you, Chris, because you're very 360, how do you think tools should be assessed for the audience here when looking at that, or between the two of you? Do you think what do you look at when you look at, like, you know, I mean, obviously like Salesforce and some of these bigger guys that are using AI, you can rely on them pretty
yeah, I mean,
safely.
I guess it depends on what you mean. Like, so, you know, are we talking about like the fine line between, like, you know, so right now there's a lot of people who, depending on what the platform is, you get somebody like 11 Labs, which does a lot of voice recreation. So you can give it about 10 minutes worth of audio of Morgan Freeman, and you know, it's going to come out like Morgan Freeman, you know, and they allow that. But there are other ones who are just there for, you know, voiceover type work, that, you know, generic guy voice, you know, whatever it is. But it sounds very human, and, you know, there's different versions of them and little accents and things. But it's not based necessarily. It's based on a larger scope of language and people's inputs. You know, it's not, here's Morgan Freeman's voice. So in those senses, it seems to be either there's going to be a law at some point, or it's so gray right now that people are getting away with this stuff. I mean, you see like Scarlett Johansson just, had to sue the AI app company because they used her image and her voice, and it was all AI generated. And while they're suing them, they're not quite sure what they're going to do about it. At the end of the day, so there's a lot of people, and so my brother's wife, she works in Hollywood, and so they do translations for all the movies basically, and so they run into these ethical concerns all the time, and we had a long discussion about it, and she's like, here's the list of people we won't use because they don't have the correct policies in place, and and things like that. But it is the Wild West now,
right.
and you're going to see a lot of that, and you see a lot of bad actors, and so it's going to be up to you, I think, as an individual and or a company to define what are your rules?
Yeah, what's your comfort? Your comfort zone? Michael, what do you think about that?
I agree 100%. I mean, I think you have to be reasonable in your approach. If you hear something that you're generating audio-wise that sounds like Morgan Freeman, or you're generating images that looks like Disney characters, you gotta just use the rule of reason and say, well, that, this could be a problem. Generally, is Disney going to come after some small, marketing company, or, somebody selling pizza in upstate New York? They can, and they sometimes do, but they're probably just going to say, cut it out, versus coming after the large models.
Yeah.
So
that's where they would direct it, probably, right?
Well, ultimately. Yeah. Ultimately. But, you'd be surprised, like Major League Baseball or these big entities, they do go after smaller entities.
Making hats or something.
Right. Their licensing is a lot of money, so they're gonna try and stomp it out wherever it flares up. So just
what would be the difference between, say, something sounding like Morgan Freeman because AI did it, and somebody doing a imitation of them in a voice, in a voice setting? So. Yeah. Certainly you can get on the mic and ever since I was a little boy, you can do Morgan Freeman, but is that really Morgan Freeman? And what's the difference?
So this is actually really interesting because I actually read this morning that YouTube is putting out a new policy that basically says, hey, if you make something with AI, you have to tell us. And if you don't tell us, and this is used, any AI was used in making it, will demonetize you, will keep you out of the YouTube partner program. So there are the companies out there that host these materials are also starting to react to all of the new creations that are coming out there. So you're going to start seeing, more of these companies come out and have stances on AI and start actually punishing people for breaking rules or pretending to be Morgan Freeman, or whatever it is, because I think these platforms also have a responsibility to create their own rules, and I think they do. YouTube is a perfect example. Overit is a good example. We use these tools. We should have the rules of how we're going to use it, and I think a platform like that should have rules too about you need to disclose if you used AI in making this, and what about this isn't real, so that people viewing this aren't going to be misled. You're not going to go down some slippery slope of impersonating celebrities or politicians and creating some kind of crazy mass hysteria or something. Because these tools obviously can be used not so great.
Yeah, on that note, I'd like to say more on that. I'm glad they did that. One of the things I've been watching is just kind of for fun is what's happening with like Spotify and YouTube too, and some of these other places is there are music creation AI sites that literally say, create this, go right on and put it on the Spotify and everywhere else and generate money. You know what I mean? Ugh. And there's there you go. So they're flooding. Spotify's just been flooded. Like if it wasn't hard enough as just a real artist, now you have a huge just wave of people just absolutely just crushing them. And then if you go on and look on YouTube, you'll find, and I saw this just last week when I was researching some of the new things, all these videos of people being look, this is all you gotta do. You generate the AI content this way, the video, the audio, do it this way, do it that way, get it on YouTube, and then you just got to build it up to your subscriber list. Bang, you'll be making $10,000 a month. This is how the math adds up. Hit Spotify over here, and it's just just like like as fast as they can generate all this stuff, hit all those things. So I'm sure that's why they did that. It's the same thing with Spotify. They're just like, we're overwhelmed.
Yeah.
We have all this content. We don't know what's
None
what.
of it's good.
None of it's good. Yeah. My whole take on that was like, and I joked around about it. I did some social media posts. I'm like, congratulations. Now you can see what it's like to get fractions of pennies for like a few plays without all the hard work. Right? You don't even have to do. As a musician, I say that. Yeah. So.
So there are bad actors out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just throw in too. There's this. People toss around the concept of fair use. And really, the line of fair use is if you're creating something for a commercial purpose and generating some revenue for it, or trying to generate some revenue, it's probably not fair use. Yeah. So if it's probably, it could be a copyright infringement or trademark infringement or something. So. So
Michael, do you have any in your line of work? Do you have any predictions of where you see some of these tools going, or has there been any conversation around like some regulation that you?
Well, certainly the White House guidelines that just came out, but that's sort of a roadmap, and maybe that the YouTube stuff that you mentioned sort of goes in line with what they're trying to achieve there. Mm-hmm. But it's the government, and laws take a long time to roll out. So you guys are going to be way ahead of any statutes or cases that come along. So that's why trying to act reasonably, so you don't really hit some tripwire that's going to have Major League Baseball or Disney slapping you in the law.
And you see some of the big guys too taking more, like Getty, or taking more responsibility for the road ahead, that roadmap ahead with their data and such. Katie, I forget, what time does this go till? Is it 10 or 10:30? Oh, okay. Phew. Chris, if you were going to, talk overall, like, is there places you would say, like, to a business where you would, talk about entry level on your side of like what to look for like from AI, from marketing? Are there certain places you think that are really easy to start? Like automation, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's kind of these workflow things.
Yeah.
Are these tasks that are either mundane or or aren't done well by humans in general. Something like I said, like the answering of the reviews, these types of things. Just being, using it in a smarter way to understand, what people, what your customers are saying, what they want, what your business could be doing better, using it for analysis of that information, as well as being able to provide a level of customer service to people that you couldn't do, without it. You're not going to have a 24-hour call center. You're not going to, but you can absolutely have 24-hour AI person who who is probably quicker and probably knows the product and the sales script better than half of the sales staff on there. So I think in that realm, as well as it takes kind of these, we deal with a lot of kind of, local, they're bigger companies, but they're local companies still the same. And, their wheelhouse is not generating, content for themselves. And so you see a lot of, disconnect between, their marketing efforts and, say, their social content, you know what I mean? Where you're seeing, people who don't have the level either of creativity or of grammar skills or, any of these things, they're able to use this to, push, professional content, for themselves, and do it in a way. I mean, we all kind of know as marketers, the more content and the better the content, the more focused it is on a subject. You continuing to keep, information out there and posting every day, and these are things that cost money if you hire, an agency to do. So people tend to do this on themselves, but the reason people hire an agency is because you have a bunch of experts doing these things. So I think in this case, they're able to really put themselves like as a, back, 20 years ago, where if this content came out, it would be from a professional agency. Now they're able to kind of do that at the social level and make it a little bit more homogeneous with, what they're doing, with their marketing efforts. So I think just, the level of professionalism and creativity that they're able to bring into certain everyday tasks, I think that's where it starts. And it is with these workflows, you know what I mean? What is it you're trying to accomplish? Defining that in, as I think the future of all this. And you see it now with, ChatGPT rolling out the GPTs,
Yeah.
You're able to, these are going to be very specific models or added definitions to the larger model of specific tasks that you want to do. And then the real fun part about the AI part about it, so it's a generative, is going to be knowing what these other things do and then telling it to connect them all. I want this to connect to this. I want it to do this. I want it to do this afterwards. These are all 6 separate APIs, 6 separate AI-generated items. That's kind of what the future of this is, I believe. I think we're going to enhance things. I think even as humans, 10 years from now, I think we could probably be at this singularity, of what that is. And, it could be pretty close to that, but we'll see us being augmented in some level. And I don't mean chips in our heads or anything necessarily, though that will be a thing. But we're off. They said basically. I was reading a story where most either futurists and scientists are saying that the exponential level of human capacity for knowledge and the ability to reference that knowledge is going to be growing 10, 100-fold over the next, every year it's going to be exponential to that. And it really is unknown of where it's going to go. This is probably the biggest technology disruptor since the steam engine.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
For sure.
And I mean, so I mean, it's something that I think every client has to start with, and they start off, I think, at least with what I am seeing it is mundane tasks, customer service tasks, things that they can worry about more about their business and not spending half their day worrying about this other thing. You know what I mean? And
so, but what you're talking about is all things that enhance a customer journey.
Correct.
All these like kind of micro,
correct.
Yeah. So that's really from A to Z, and I think that's pretty incredible. What about predictions over here? Do we have any?
You want to go first?
Or hopes and dreams of where you know what, Jeremy, you did mention this to me the other day, is like kind of those that workspace, the workflows you think can change, will keep changing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. We're going to have crazy workflow changes. I mean, we talked about it earlier, in that, I think prompt crafting and prompt engineering is going to be a thing. And companies will be hiring people who know how to speak to these models, and that's going to be a whole paradigm shift in and of itself. Predictions?
Well, maybe that's future.
All right, so future. Short term.
Yeah, short term.
You're going to see the imagery is going to get better. It's going to get more real. It's going to get more focused on the specific things that you're prompting. So if you want an oil painting, or you want, a fractal, or you want, you're going to be able to dial those things in a lot better. I think you're going to have designer wishes and tools added first. So things like, I want this image to be generated with transparency, as an example, right? Like right now we can't do that. So if I generate something really great, I still have to bring it into another tool and chop it out, right? So that's probably going to be a thing. You're going to see the text to video stuff blow up real soon. That's getting better and better, and the companies who are working on that are pioneering new techniques. So you're going to see people being able to, basically create, music videos, or 30-second, probably longer snippets from just text. I've seen a couple of tools that are doing really, really incredible things with that, like scary, like, oh my God, that's really a tiger walking through a field. So that's going to be a thing. You're going to see 3D images being able to be generated from prompts. So, I'll type in like, I want a train, and, I'll get like a 3D model of a train that I can then import into another program and like texture it and color it or whatever. So like that's going to be a thing. What else?
That's a lot.
There's going to be, from what I've heard, they want to start, specifically Midjourney, but I think other companies too, they want to start like creating like spaces and like I don't even know how to describe it. I guess like like a virtual 3D environment to create these things in, rather than just like sitting at your computer and typing in with a keyboard. So I know that they have plans on doing some really interesting things with technology moving forward. So in the image world, there's a lot of fun things that are coming, and scary stuff, like there's going to be video and you're not going to be able to trust it. There's going to be photos of people doing things and you're not going to be able to trust. However,
optimists.
Right, optimist in me.
Yeah.
Most of these companies are, and I know Midjourney is working on it, and I think a couple other companies are working on it as well. They will be creating tools where you can basically insert an image into a tool and it'll spit back whether it was generated using an AI tool. So people are already thinking through kind of like how to reverse engineer these things. So it's not that scary that, if you find an image and you're questioning it, maybe the next thing you'll do is go to this new web tool, upload this image, and this image will go, oh yeah, this is totally generated by AI. Here's a link to it. It's live on, Midjourney's website or whatever. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there as well for optimistic thinking.
Awesome.
And not just.
And I only have one other question besides after this, and then we'll go to questions. Alex, that's your cue, just to be yes. So Dave, what about you? You said they're lagging behind, but I bet you're full of predictions.
I got all sorts of thoughts. But I mean, like maybe short term, quickly, like some catching up and stuff. Look at the prompting, that kind of stuff. Some of the voiceover stuff, like the Morgan. I've heard some really impressive stuff. Yep. I've also heard stuff that sounds like a lot like maybe like automated phone calls from like 5 years ago. Still, lots of that.
Yeah.
So it's got to catch up. In some of those ways for us to use it. We're still using voiceover actors, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So it's getting there. Improvement in a lot of ways, just overall quality, stuff like that. So just that general kind of improvement. But some of the things I've been contemplating lately, I was kind of running through my mind the other week. Like a lot of people say, and I've been reading on the internet because I was really interested in what people think, I'm just everyday person, and I see a lot of this stuff where people are saying that, well, the music will never have the soul, and I really started contemplating that and thinking about it and going like, I think it probably would be able to eventually.
I agree.
And the reason for that, Chris agrees with me. So here's why. I can't think of a reason why not. But so check it out. So if like Chris is a vocalist, he's a great vocalist. If we were in the recording studio, and let's say we're just getting warmed up, we're getting started, you give me we have a track that's like the right content, right? We
you want to belt it out.
We know it's right. And if we're in the studio and you're giving me like maybe a take that's like kind of playing and like whatever, I know how to communicate to you,
right,
and you know how to understand what I'm saying to get it the life and the soul it needs.
But it's still instruction.
We know how to do it. It's still instruction, right? So like, why couldn't? And if I'm playing my bass and I'm sitting there recording a track, I don't even have to hear the thing back. I know that was a little off and didn't feel right. I know what to do. It's a thing. It's a real thing.
Yep.
It's not magic. It's never magic. I think that applies to AI in general. Yep. It's not magic. It's never magic. In the studio, it's not really magic. It's never magic. There's a real thing. If I just lag a little here, if I play a little softer, play a little harder, I know exactly what to do. And if you have the song with the right content, it's about the right thing, a timely thing that'll grip people, which could be written with AI. So why couldn't it? Why couldn't it have the soul? So I feel like a lot of people are telling themselves that to like sleep better at night, but I'm going like, I don't see it. I don't see why.
I mean, you could put in, every James Brown song ever done, and learn from his inflection, from his, he's a little ahead of the beat here, he's a little behind the beat here, and I want to apply, great feeling. It's going to learn from. There's no reason why not. Because how did I learn to do that? I learned it by listening to James Brown too. You know what I mean? And so there's no real difference. It's going to be in processing power.
You'll have to know to prompt it the right way.
Right, exactly.
Stuff and everything, but
you're already doing that with the real people.
Yeah, that's exactly it. We're already doing that with the real people.
I agree.
Yeah. So
Okay.
that's my prediction.
That's awesome. Okay, so one last question, then we'll open it up, and I'm looking forward to other people's questions. But so I'll give you a very small example, but Dave, I want you to answer this for sure, because you told me a story the other day. I think it was yesterday. It's blur. When you're using AI tools, have you run across any like backlash or people or maybe that wasn't a good place to use it? So, and a very small example is, what we talked about using one of those meeting tools, right? Record your meetings. Great, but make sure you tell the people that you're going to have it there and what it is and what the purpose of it is, and make sure they know that even
it's weird when it just shows up.
Yeah, because it's like if Michelle's AI shows up and I'm not there, and then it sends a thing and all the meeting happened because I forgot about it, and they talk about squirrels the whole time and the squirrel fell in their pool, and then you get the report and you're like, oh, look at all that whatever it is, the client gets it. So that goes back to the policies and the governance and making sure where you have that set up, internal and external. What have you seen in that?
Yeah. So my buddy's band, they, I know them. They're probably all very busy being musicians and being parents to really have a grasp on AI like we do.
Yeah.
So they don't, so what they did is that they hired somebody to make an AI generated music video, and it was like really blatantly AI generated looking. Like it was just really, you know what I mean? Like, and the backlash to that was, they're friends of mine. It was terrifying for me. It's also a matter of knowing your audience. So I think that their audience was in general very against the idea, and they're very of the mindset of AI generated anything is just creative theft. It's just straight up that, and whatever. I mean, you could nitpick the video and be like, how was this done? And did this person really do what you do, or what? Whatever. But the whole thing is, the backlash was almost terrifying. It was really terrifying. I mean, they were they got death threats. I almost wanted to go to my buddy's on tour with the band right now, but I'd like to be like, hey man, can you give me more information on this? What exactly did you guys do? How did you go about it? What feedback did you get? What did you do after? I know that they tried some form of damage control where they were just like, hey, it's, we're making this art, and art always causes, can sometimes cause controversy, and we're just out there, we're getting the discussion started, and it's really that kind of take that I feel like maybe it would take, which made it way worse. And the whole thing just went way out of control. So it was really, really interesting. I knew I had seen online the backlash, but I hadn't had any kind of it wasn't personal experience for me, but it was a near personal, you know what I mean? It was my friends, you know what I mean? I'm watching this happen, and I also got a sense of other people involved, other people, friends of friends, and things like that. What about some AI video like this? No. Nobody wants to have happen what just happened to them. You know what I mean? Nobody, and there's this whole nope. Fear of anything.
Yeah.
Even in a subtle way. So I'd kind of talk somebody into maybe possibly accepting something.
Yeah. So it's wild. So I think the know your audience, use your power for good. These are all really things to keep in mind.
Power for good.
Use your power for good. I like to just channel Yoda whenever I can. But anyway, I think we're ready for questions now from the audience and online. And Alex over here has a microphone. Yeah. Right here, Alex, we got a question. And please introduce yourself.
Oh, hi. I'm Kate Schmeeding.
Hello.
Creative Operations Director. And I've just been listening to everybody. We all have egos, or else we wouldn't be in this industry of creativity, right? And I haven't explored too intensely, but do you know that feeling when you're just in the zone on a creative idea, and you feel so proud of yourself that you're that is the idea, and I can't wait to explore it. Do you get that same feeling and sort of satisfaction from your own self when you're using AI?
Well, yes, right, yes. But here's the thing, though. I'm not using it in a way, like I mentioned before, like, you know, like create a whole track or something, create music. I'm still doing it myself. So yes, you know, but I'm using it for the little tools, the side thing, you know, the little bit here, little bit there, like take care of. I'm more psyched about like the taking care of some like menial tasks, like small peripheral things. And I want this kind of conversation I was having with my buddy the other day, like, why would you want it to do all the creative part for you? That's the fun part. Like you're saying, it's like, no, you know what I mean? So yeah, I do get it because I think I'm using what's available to me the right way. Yeah. And I can pass that along to the next person.
Yes, I think so. I think I still am I'm very excited about the things we make, mostly because, you know, we don't use a ton of AI in our final production work. We do, for sure. But mostly we use it right now as like a quick ideation, you know, let's get something in front of a client. This is a really cool idea that might cost a whole lot of money. And, you know, it's hard for me to be able to articulate this great idea to you, you know, with, you know, pen and paper or, you know, my own personal skills without having to involve, you know, another department or, you know, 40 hours worth of work, but I really like this idea and I want you to buy in on it. You know, AI is great for stuff like that. So for me, generally, it's always enhanced my work and made me more, you know, excited about what I'm working on. And like Dave said, it takes care of all the stupid menial things so I can focus on creating I can add more value to my client by like, I don't have to spend, you know, 40 minutes, you know, recreating Michelle's, you know, dress pattern on her shirt. I can just go, boom, that's done. And I can put my focus somewhere else on something that's more important in my presentation or in the document that I'm creating. So the feeling hits if, you know, you use a piece of AI in a final piece, you know, and maybe you're like, oh, you know, that could have been, if the client had a bigger budget and we had a whole team behind us, that could have been, you know, put into production and actually made into, but sometimes the client doesn't have that. And so we're trying to add value where we can. And so I look at that tool and I'm like, that's added value to the client who wouldn't have had the budget for a 3D model or a texture, somebody to spend 40 hours to make this thing. We got it out the door for you very quickly. That's value to me and that helps the client. So I feel good about it.
Can we say one more thing?
Yeah.
I think that feeling comes from a lot of the time from like the creation of the big picture, right?
Idea.
So so like for me, it's like, you know, I've been always dabbling in computer music and like some other stuff and Eurorack and all these other things that people have been like, is that like authentic or not? You know what I mean? And it's like, yes, because I'm like, you know, whatever. At the end of the day, I decide whether it's cool or not, whatever. But it's really about the big picture. So AI takes care of all these other little components. You know what I mean? So that feeling, to me, is always associated with
you're always
the top level.
You almost feel closer to it in a way
Mm-hmm.
because you didn't have to like, you know, take all these other side roads off your main path to do all these stupid little menial tasks, or, you know, like you're excited about the big picture, but you can't get there for 4 hours because you have all these nonsense photos that you have to edit, or this stupid thing you have to apply to all these photos, or whatever it is. You know, with AI, you can take care of that really quickly and then go back to that really fun, exciting building part. You know, you don't have to sit there and slog through, oh, I have to sit here all day and just slice out things in Photoshop or whatever it is. You know, like I can actually get that slice and then go right back into it and start, you know, arranging the pieces or generating whatever it is that I'm looking for. So sometimes I get a little touch of it. But I really think it depends on how you know, fit it into your workflow.
I would add too, from the language model perspective, it's like, you know, if I have an idea, it's like almost like bouncing it off with a super smart friend who's read the entire internet, right? So if I'm like bouncing an idea and I need that validation or I need input, it's like a riff partner for me. So I'm kind of bouncing back and forth and making sure I'm validating an idea, or I'm uploading data and going, you know, am I reading this correctly? Like, am I surmising this correctly? And it's just like helping me, you know, ideate whatever that idea is. So it's been wonderful. What about for you in your world?
Well, I mean, coming from somebody, I guess, as a program architect or application development or product development, right?
Yeah, that's what I would, yeah.
Yeah, like, you know, as product development, we're always kind of, you know, it is about the big idea, you know, it is about, this is what I want this product to do from a software perspective. This is, you know, these are the pieces that I, you know, what its actual function is and how cool is this going to be when it's complete. I think that's all still there. And as a programmer, you are already kind of doing that, except, you know, you're going in and writing a function and you're going and writing a function, but the computer's running the function at the end of the day. So it's still the architecture of the thing that you're making, you know what I mean? Whether it's a piece of art or a piece of software, it's the idea, like everybody said, you know, that's the part. And being able to get to the end game of that idea in a quick manner so that you can see that idea come to fruition, you know, in a day rather than a week, you know, I think that keeps you on, you know, focused on task, and it's and allows you to take the rest of that week to clean up more ideas or to make, you know, little pieces of those things better, and you know, it's like ultimately that's the exciting part to me. So I still, you know, I've always gotten that from the idea itself. It never doesn't change necessarily because it's still my idea. I'm just guiding it to do certain things for me as part of it.
Yeah, for sure. Other questions?
Hi, my name's Tim. I'm a software engineer by profession, but I'm also an audio engineer and producer.
Cool.
So my question, I guess, for all of you is, have you found yourself running up against, I would say, like the limits of prompting and how I imagine there would be some disconnect between like the specific idea in your head and the like ability to translate that into words just generally. I think the example you gave of like the thing that you can feel with like your bass playing and like, you know, it's got to lag behind a little bit. Maybe this is why audio is lagging behind. I just know like from working with other producers and stuff, sometimes they'll be like, I want this synth to sound warmer. And we have different ideas of what warmer means, you know, like they'll want like, they'll be talking, they want like saturation on it, but to me, I'm like, oh, I'm taking some top end off, right? That's what you want. And like, it's, so I'm just wondering if you've had any experiences with image generation or any prompting where you've encountered kind of that limit.
I guess there's more of a question for you guys, right, with prompting, or me. I mean, the only thing
Maybe
I can
that's
really
why
say
we
about
don't
it.
have
Yeah,
it,
I can
right?
I can say something about it real quick. I mean,
Sure.
I mean, so some of the stuff I'm using is a little bit more, like I said, machine learn and like less the prompting stuff. But I will definitely throw stuff at it where it just misses dramatically. You know what I mean? Like it thinks my synth is a bass or whatever. You know, so I have to like go through and just tell it to do all things. But there's a lot of things that I find that's just easier, you know, for me to just kind of like do by myself right now, just do it the old way. You know what I mean? For me, you know what I mean? And yes, there's a lot of, in audio, there's a lot of gray area with things like, warm. You know, that's a really great example. I was kind of laughing about that. I'm sure Adam was thinking the same thing in the back there. You know, what that means to everybody. When people want analog warmth, they don't realize how much like, you know, like tape, like high end is going to go away. You know what I mean? So people just don't, there's a lot of language, weird stuff going on. Yeah, so a lot of times I still just totally take manual control over stuff. You know what I mean? You know, but the tools get me where I need to be, you know, like more than half the time, and you know, it's a good thing. But as far as other prompting, I mean, I guess I know what you're saying. In a similar way to that, what about other prompting in the image world, right? Like
all the time. I hit the wall constantly. Like a client that I was working with Dan was creating a new album for, you know, their band, and they wanted to play around with AI for the album cover. And so Dan was like, hey, you know, here's some basic instruction on what they're looking for. What can you come up with, right? So I started like playing around with the tools and inserting prompts. And what I found out was like Midjourney like doesn't know what a horse skeleton is, as an example, right? And so if your model that you're working with just wasn't trained on the thing that you're looking for, which happens all the time, you get crazy oddities. A great example is like Midjourney in hands. Like I'm sure people in here have seen, you know, the screens of, you know, like 6, 7 hands gripping onto something or whatever. It was a huge thing when AI models first started coming onto the scene last year. It was, you know, when we first started getting people, it's hands, it's terrible at hands, because it just wasn't trained. There wasn't enough original data for the algorithm to know when you ask for a hand, or like when it draws a person, it's just like, well, hands are just long things, right? So there's a number of them, so however many, and it just did it. And so, you know, that's a constant. And so what ends up happening is, you know, with stuff like that, you either have to wait for the model to get updated, or hope that you can, you know, tease the model by poking it into getting it to do different things. So a lot of times, like if I can't get Midjourney to make something, or, you know, Adobe Firefly to make something with the tools that I have, like maybe I'll go online and look like for someone else's prompt or another prompt that someone else created, so that I can see like, oh, this image kind of got where I wanted to go. How did they get there? And I believe that some of these tools are going to be releasing basically you can upload an image to the tool, and the tool will tell you, like, based on the image that you uploaded, here are the words that you would use to generate an image like this. So moving forward, now that the models are being trained a little bit better, and we have a more complete data set, you'll be able to kind of generate these things. But it happens constantly, all the time. And there's really no way around it yet, other than talking to the tools, trying to tease out what you want, and then waiting for updates. But yeah, constantly.
In the same thing in the language model, I've run across definitely strange things. I was riffing with it for podcast names around brand, and it actually spit back to me verbatim the book Story Brand. I don't know if any of you folks have read it in marketing, but verbatim. And I was like, this is like the book. So I actually took my prompts and I wrote the author, and I said, hey, I don't know if you want to be in these language models, but this is kind of crazy that it spit it out. And also I've had it pull up things about the background I gave it on me, where it's like referencing me, which is really cool when it actually says, oh, Michelle, feels this way about shoes, so because I did put that in there, if you can't tell, I just like shoes. So, but it's neat how, yes, and then you'll have to do what Jeremy said, re-prompt it, re-talk to it, re-engage it, or, in my case, and I think with you too, sometimes you'll use multiple image generators, won't you? Yeah, so he actually showed in the presentation you can download from our link tree, he shows an example, I think that was Midjourney, just a few years difference.
Mm-hmm.
But
1 year difference.
You can do that even between like Adobe's product and Midjourney, and use the same prompts and see what it spits out. And that's between Claude 2, Perplexity, ChatGPT. You can do that same copy and paste of prompts and see what it gives back to you.
And combine your results too in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
Right? Like sometimes they'll take something from Adobe AI and something from Midjourney and just merge them together, or take an image that I generated from one tool and feed it into another tool and then add a prompt to it, or take 2 images that I generated from 2 different tools and bring them into a new tool and just blend them together and see what happens. So there's a lot of really cool ways to iterate once you start creating things.
How many monitors do you work with?
5.
Yeah.
Every day. Yeah, I love 5.
Yeah, 5.
I need more monitors.
How many do you work with?
I have 4, but
okay.
I have 3 different computers, to be fair.
There you go. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I need more monitors. Obviously, Dave. We need more monitors.
I like to have all the information in front of me.
I would like that too. I got to get cooler like you.
It's easier to access.
I think image generation is ahead of everybody though. With
by
that,
far.
Like we're the part of refining things is a big thing. So there's negative keywords. Negative prompts is a big thing now.
Right.
Yeah, in painting, yeah, absolutely. So I was going to ask you, are you doing in painting in Midjourney, or are you doing it outside another tool?
Both. So Midjourney recently, a lot of the tools are, they're all over the place in terms of when they're actually adding feature sets. So in painting, if anybody isn't familiar, is essentially like you generate an image in AI, and then you can select a specific piece of it and then rerun the prompt, but only in that little spot that you selected. And so refining those tools, makes it easier to refine an image, because what ends up happening is, let's say I love everything about the image, but one part of it, right? Normally what would end up happening is I just have to regenerate that prompt and pray that I get something else, or version off of it, right? Like I want something like this, right. But when you hit the version button, in a lot of cases, you don't have a lot of control. When they added remixing, what happens is you can tell Midjourney that you want to remix in the future, and when you hit the version button, the prompt window will come back up, and it'll be like, hey, do you want to edit anything in here before I rerun this prompt? So in a lot of ways, there's really cool ways of versioning off of what you've already made, iterating off of what you've already made, and then being able to in-paint in the program, or if it's for a client, generally I probably won't in-paint in the program. I'll probably pull it out and do it in Photoshop just because it's more clean and easier to use. But really, when it comes to in-painting in the programs or online, most of the in-painting tools are, they're great for for generating images in the tool and keeping the image in the tool, but almost always, when you get out of that tool, your results are going to be better if you're playing around in Photoshop or whatever. Usually in painting is only used, not only, but a lot of people use it for the on-platform clout, I want this image to rank really high and there's something wrong with it, so I'll in-paint it and edit it and then it'll rank higher. So stuff like that.
What? Oh, all right.
Lots of hands.
All right. Alex.
Let's zoom.
I have a question from the online
Oh, cool.
audience. Okay, so Stacy is interested in citing sources for images or copy for AI.
Hard to do right now. So if you were going to include any kind of copyright imagery or being able to cite it, right now it's very difficult. What you can do is create, if you're going to create imagery, you want to have some kind of a source to it. The only thing I could say is blending images works really well. So if you have an image that you own or already have, let's say you're a photographer and you have a whole library of images, right? You can use these tools to blend photos together, multiple photos. I think it's up to 5 or 10. And that'll keep it within your own realm. But if you say generate me a picture of a field and some trees or a landscape or whatever it is, there's no way of knowing unless you're familiar with the people who train the model of where that data originally came from, right? You have no idea. So I've said this before about like Midjourney is being sued along with a lot of other AI tools. And, what I've said before is even if the suit is successful and Midjourney has to kill their current model tomorrow, right? They're just going to retrain using legal data and they're going to have a new model and it's going to be just as good as the current model. There's nothing technically legally wrong with it other than maybe the way that their data is trained. So there's really no way of knowing unless you trust your source. Like Adobe Firefly would be one that I would trust maybe more, right, than somebody like Midjourney, only because Adobe has that backing and they have a whole legal department and they know where their images are coming from. They're probably licensing imagery from places like Getty and other really, really large platforms that have large photo libraries. But currently, at least with the current tools, and Chris, you can stop me if I'm wrong, but I can't think of a way of being able to cite the source from where an image or where a part of an image or where a piece of image came from. And let me just back up a little bit. That's mostly because of the way that Stable Diffusion works. All of these models that we've talked about today are generative AI are trained using Stable Diffusion. And essentially Stable Diffusion works like, let's say I bake a cake. And it's got all these great ingredients and everything that I made. And then I take it and I throw it against the wall and it splatters into 1,000 pieces, right? Stable Diffusion is basically going back and looking at that splattered cake on the wall and then recreating the cake based on the splattered remains. So it's not essentially it took half of the photo from Annie Leibovitz and it took this tree from this photo from somebody else and it combined them. It works more like the way that the human brain does, where you see trees every day, all the time. And if I sat anybody down in this room and I said, draw me a tree, you would have to be referencing the things that you've seen in the past, right? And the model does the same thing. The model looks at these images and it destroys it into noise. And then it tries to rebuild the image based on the noise. So the idea of being able to cite a source from where an image came from, as opposed to being able to, cite the source from where a piece of data came from, they're just completely different things in there. Basically it's not doable unless you are the author of the original image, you own the original image, and you feed that image into the machine. That's really the only way that you're going to know.
Which is what Getty's doing,
right? Which is what Getty is doing. And some of these other tools, they're going to create their own AI models, I have absolutely no doubt, based on their own large libraries, right? So we subscribe to Getty already, and depending, if I need a stock photo, it's a 50-50 shot right now, whether I'll try to put something in AI and get a photo out or whether I'll try to put it into Getty and get it out. It really depends on who the client is, whether they're aware that we're using the tool, and what the usage is for the image, right?
Alex, we got more questions up here.
So mine's kind of along those lines. You were talking about creating an album for your friend's band. If you're using AI, then that would be a commercial use because they plan to sell their CD or whatever. Mm-hmm. So where do you know, or how do you know when you're about to cross the line into I shouldn't use that because it's not fair use, because it's copyrighted or could be copyrighted, and okay, this can be used. Like AI generated this, but I don't know where any of these things came from.
Yep.
Like you are talking about already that you're using it with some of your clients.
Absolutely. Yep.
So how do you know that that's okay?
Right. Well, we don't, and that's one of the things that we tell our clients up front, right? When we're using these things, like for a good example, right? We generated some AI characters for a pest control company. And we did it mostly because, the client was brand new. They didn't have a lot of imagery in their library. And so we had this great idea, like, hey, we're using these AI generative tools. We can create some really cool imagery for you, but we don't know who owns them. What do you think of that? And when they said it, and when we said that and we pitched the images to them, they're like, go for it. We're cool with it, and if at the end of the day we have to take it down, we can replace these images with something else. When it comes to like a band, or in this case, the band came to Dan, and they said, like, we want to use AI on our cover. Well, I might not have pitched it, but they wanted it.
The pest company.
Yep.
And you created a character and they like it and they want to copyright that character. They can't do it.
They can't do it. Now, we told them that ahead of time, that whatever we generate here, you can't own and you can't copyright. But they were fine with it. They were like, this is really great art. We want to get it out there. No, I don't think anybody would come after them for the art that we created. But it's totally possible, I guess, because it was AI generated, right? It's not like explicitly said on the site, like these images were generated in AI, but they were. But when it comes to like the copyright thing, our fine guest over there can talk more about that.
The only thing I would add is that copyright infringement is sort of where we're going with this, is a sort of very complicated little world, but it's the test is whether there's material similarity. And so you put that in front of a jury. Does this thing that you generated look like something that Disney generated or whatever it might be? And it's not a simple black and white test. So
I actually asked him, because we pre-gamed before this. So I was actually asking, like, let's say, as an example, that I generated something and Disney came after it, right? It was something that looked maybe like it was Pixar or Disney related. And I said, like, would it make a difference, my intent, right? Like the prompt itself, right? Like, let's say I just said, like, cute 3D animated character, as opposed to like Disney Pixar character, right, in my prompt, right? Does that matter? And at the end of the day, the answer is really not really. It's really like, these two pictures, what do they look like? Are they materially similar enough to be confused for one another, or does this image infringe on the rights of this other image? But it's strange to me that like my intent isn't necessarily considered in that, right? So like whether or not you were like, I want this to look like this, or whether it happened by accident, like when it gets in front of a jury and a judge and the law, like they don't really care. Like it just comes down to the material representation of the two images, not necessarily like my intent when I started. So it's kind of interesting. But right now, it's the Wild West when it comes to images. You're going to see them everywhere online all the time until all of a sudden you don't. And there's going to be a ruling or something that happens eventually that is probably going to curtail some of the use of this in one way or another, or at least require some kind of
Which seems odd to me, though. At the end of the day, I think there's a misunderstanding. Like you said, like the reason you can't generate sources for images is not because they don't, these things, it was just, that's how the human brain is trained. You were literally learning how to draw a tree. You're not learning how to draw that tree.
Right, exactly.
You know what I mean? And as an artist or a musician or anything else, everybody learns from styles, right? Good artists borrow, bad artists steal kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. And so at the end of the day, how, I think, you remember famous kind of Congress thing, I thought the internet was, pipes and tubes, you know what I mean? And it really isn't like that. At some point in the next 10 years, it's going to get to the point where we're going to have to start talking about the conscious level of AI and what is it, and what is the difference between me sitting here and drawing something or creating something and it drawing something and creating something. It's trained in the the exact same manner as my brain is trained.
Basically the same way,
You know,
yeah.
so, and I get the copyright part of it. It's easy enough to, you know, if you sat and drew a Disney character and tried to sell it, well, then you're going to get sued for it, and that's pretty much what it should be. But there's going to be a level where everybody's saying, well, you're training in my data, it's my data, I should get paid for it. So when do you start going after people for looking at the sky, or you know, or looking at your logo and understanding it? So it is the Wild West, but I mean, I am afraid that legislation, like everything else in the planet, will get screwed up because lack of understanding of how it even
Well, that's
works.
the thing. That's why a lot of the lawsuits are going to fail, right? Because they don't understand how the tool works, and they start citing these things about the tools, and they're like, it's copying my image. It took a piece of my... It didn't. It can't. It's not capable of doing that. So your lawsuit's going to fail on its merits.
Don't underestimate the stupidity.
You know, I mean, I can see how people... It's scary because it's, you know, people are afraid that it's going to come and it's going to take their jobs away. And,
it is.
And, you know, and the thing is he's not wrong, but the difference is that it's going to take the jobs from the people who don't embrace the tools, right? It's going to take the jobs from the people who are insistent that the only way to do this thing is the way that I was trained to do it 20 years ago. And this is the right way to do it. It's the only way to do it. And any other way of doing it is bad, or it's devaluing human creativity, or whatever it is. And meanwhile, that person's going to be a dinosaur next week. The only way to keep up is to embrace these tools and to fit them into your workflow in a way that makes sense, right? It's not like you're going to bring it into your workflow and just go, oh, I'm going to walk away from the computer, I'm going to put in a prompt, and then just bye. You know, like there's a lot of still human intervention, human interaction, you know, piecing these things together once they come out. You know, it's not just like, you know, put in a prompt and then, we have a new music video for U2 or whatever. You know, like it's not like that at all. There's still a ton of human involvement and intervention, no matter where you are along the process.
A conductor.
I mean, I think it goes... Oh, no, I was going to say, I mean, I think it, you know... the whole, you know, will AI take my job is one of those top questions, right, of everybody. But the reality of it is we've been through this a billion times in the history of humans, you know, from the wheel to the steam engine to, you know, to what, whatever it is, you know, either you know, progress and adapt, you know, for every job that, you know, the horse-drawn cart lost to the steam engine, you know, there were a million other jobs created because of the steam engine, you know, and people, yes, people are going to lose their jobs, and people are going to either adapt and find a way to what they did and use AI, or you're going to have to find another space, and it just is what it is. That is just the world. Yeah, so I think your people are, you know, going to do that, but just like everything else, if you adapt and you know, and there'll be new opportunities. I think the one difference that we run into now, though, is that what we've run into in the past has been physical labor people type losing their jobs. Now we're seeing, you know, other people,
knowledge workers,
right? Right, exactly. Creativity, art, you know, lawyers. I mean, how many, you know, legal forms now are being filled out and generated? I don't know if anybody watches South Park still, but the latest South Park, you know, kind of, you know, you see these guys in front of Home Depot and they're lawyers and geologists. I'll geology for you if you'll fix my toilet. You know what I mean? And so it's kind of reversing how everything is. But yeah, I mean, I think that's another part of it. I think there's a lot of scared, smart people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
because they're talented.
Apprehensive.
They're talented people. They're talented in a specific thing. Like concept artists is a great example. Like it's a scary world if you're a concept artist right now, because it's very easy for me to go online and just be like, storyboard me this. Give me images of this. Make it more look like this artist, or make it look like this, or, you know, make it more painterly or whatever. And all of a sudden that person doesn't have a job, right? I have no need for them. But is that really the case, or, you know, is it just that they didn't take that tool and they're still painting pictures and it takes 3 weeks to get a photo, you know, to get stuff from them, as opposed to, you know, now I've got, oh my God, I've got a whole storyboard ready to show a client, and, you know, the end of a day, as opposed to having to wait for, you know, paintings or whatever. You know, like it really depends on what the workflow is and how people fit into it.
Another question? We got time for one more? Yeah. Hey, Zach.
Hey, so I am a content creator, and I handle the whole workflow from shooting video, concept ideation, all the way up to editing it and posting online, doing all the social media. And as I use these tools more and more, my workflow gets faster, it shrinks, and more I become not a content creator, but a content curator. And I think that as we move forward into these new tools, we become, the role of humans in this process shifts to one that becomes more about choosing the pieces and parts of the story we want to tell, and rather the actual building of the story. I wonder if you guys could think about that or riff off that, or I think the content creation part is changing drastically into more of a curation.
I think you're still the architect, right? You're the engineer of your idea, and that's at the end of the day. That's what this is. You know, it is your creative idea that is filling out the information. It's just giving you, taking pieces of your process, but at the, it's either speeding them up or helping you think differently or whatever that is. But I think at the end of the day, it is you still, your idea that is guiding it, and I think that's where this goes. I think you're right. Content creator or content architecture. You're building from your idea, and these tools are just helping you, build your idea.
I do a lot of idea generation, and so usually I have an idea, but I always tap all of these folks. So I feel like a conductor already. Oftentimes like I tap all these amazing, talented people, and I depend on them. So now I still feel like that conductor, and I'm still, doing my piece, but then I'm able to kind of pass the stuff off, and they're able to ideate and conduct their piece, and we're able to kind of bring those things together. And I think that's where a lot of these workspaces and workflows will come in as we go. And it sounds like you have some workflows, which I think is super cool. And I think those kind of things just help, empower us to be better, and also give us the headspace to work on those more important pieces and not get stuck on the little tasks that we need to do. So it gives us headspace to be more creative, to emphasize the pieces that we want, and maybe depend on the technology on the things that we don't really want to spend our time doing.
I was going to say that exact thing. So
you were, yeah,
it was, yeah. Mostly just that it takes away all of the mundaneness of a task.
Yeah,
the stuff that makes it the hard parts of the day, the tedious, tenuous tasks that a computer can take over to allow you to, focus more on being creative or adding value, or, trying to think through the client's problem, this thing that would have taken me 2 hours is now taking me, 10 minutes. And now I have this extra time. What can I do with that extra time to add value to this project, whether it's me or passing it to somebody else and saying hey, I just did this whole thing, Nick, you have 15 minutes, animate this for me, or you have an hour or 2 hours, or, I saved us a whole bunch of time. Let's throw this in front of a client and animate it, or let's do something else. So, the way that I see utilizing these is just allowing me to put my creative focus on a different part, rather than a part that I know I can get done and do it well. I can give to AI, let AI do it, and then focus on something that maybe I wouldn't have done, or something that takes me more time because I don't have to focus on the silly task, like clipping things out, or some tedious menial task. And
I feel like people's biggest fears are it's going to replace all the creative soul and human and everything, but it's like and a lot of creatives I think that, and it's I think that, hey, you need to use this tool because the reality is you actually get better. You get better, and it puts you in a position to be more creative. You can choose to, like you said, do all the other peripheral things and have more time to be creative instead of replacing the creative thing. So there's this disconnect. It's hey, no, it's not actually replacing the human like that. If you could choose.
You could choose to do that, but again, if you choose to do it the right way, you end up with garbage. If you remove people from it. In my experience, all of the AI stuff that's created without people involved at the very specific touch points, it's all bad. It doesn't tell a story. It doesn't resonate with people. It might be cool looking for a minute, but it doesn't. It needs humans. You can't just create human content without humans involved and have a human be oh yeah, I totally relate to this thing. You won't relate to it. You can't. Exactly. It's impossible.
Alex, it's almost like after this, we're going to take one more question, but Alex, I was going to say after that sentence, maybe we should just drop the mic, because that's the end. But we do have time for one more. And don't drop the mic. Adam would be very upset. Don't drop the mic. What's the last question here?
As marketers, we're really good at putting adjectives in front of things to add value: organic food, farm to table restaurant, handcrafted furniture. You know, you're talking about how steam engines, whatever, replace things. What is going to be the adjective that we put in front of analog created things or non-AI created things? Is it authentic or made by creatives, or like what is your predictive adjective that you're going to stick in front of?
Human.
Human made.
Organically made. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see an added value. I think what you'll end up seeing is, regardless of what humans make, there will be more of an added value to things that are analog. I think people will react naturally to, like, oh my God, look, you can create these beautiful things with just a snap of a finger. Like, you totally can if you have the right prompt. But people still want to be able to exercise their creativity, and I think you're going to see a lot of that.
Well, I mean, watching what's happened to vinyl since,
There you go,
2010 or something.
Right.
You know, it's like just exploding. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
And
That's
people
the cool
want
thing.
that analog experience, and I think you're never going to escape it. And I think what's going to happen is, you'll just see an added value to human-made things, human craft. Whether it's like furniture, architecture, physical, real paintings, art installation. Those things may all be AI inspired in some way, and there's nothing wrong with that. Humans get inspiration from the craziest and weirdest places. But I think at the end of the day, you're never going to lose that tactile, human, creative sense of things. You might lose it a little bit in the digital world, but when you come into the real world, I think there's just going to be this added value to people who do create real things and who don't necessarily use computers to create things. And I think there will be, a resurgence of, maybe it's paintings or museums or, whatever it is, some kind of real human-made thing that isn't these digital pixels that are arranged by a computer in a very specific way to invoke some sort of a reaction.
I just finished a book fairly recently called The Power of Analog by David Sachs, who's like a futurist, and it was well before where we are now that he wrote that book. But it does touch on vinyl and some of these things. And I'm a geek. I love like coasters and I don't know, anything like kind of tactile, and I do think, I agree with you. I think, and I think about audio actually in the field of human interaction, because, I notice music that makes me like happy when I walk through a grocery store, or I hear a sonic brand when I open a door, like those kind of five senses sort of things with that I'm excited about. Some of those things didn't really take off in the movie theaters. They talked about like smells are going to come out of your seats, and the water sprays that only happens when you go to like Disney or Universal. But some of those things, we'll see where it all goes. But I guess on that note, we are out of time, but I want to say we're going to all hang out here. We love to talk about AI, if you can't tell, and we're very open to questions. And we also need to hear from all of you guys on what you'd like us to talk about next. This is a series. This is just the intro. So I really hope you come talk to us all. Tell us what you want to learn. Tell us what you're interested in. And all of you, go home and get a language model, please. Pay for one. All right. And thank you, everybody, staff included, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you, Michelle. Setting it up. Thank you.
Ooh, we did it.